Thank you, and thank you for being here today. We are really enjoying the conference and seeing a lot of familiar faces that have been working in open education for the last 2 decades. And some of you are just new to this space, but we're really glad that you're here. This is going to be a retrospective and walkthrough around the Go Open Network and the way that we've been supporting professional learning and networking opportunities, especially this year in the K-12 landscape. Today's agenda will meet our presenters, give you an overview of the network and its benefits, and talk about some of the concrete resources, releases that have come out in the last year, especially the professional learning webinar series. We're going to give you some highlights as we walk through the sessions that we've given this year as a way to understand the supports that we're giving to professional learning and ways that you can continue to, or join us, continue to contribute to advancing K-12 educator knowledge in the US, but anywhere really. And then we'll have time to have your questions. So let's meet the panel. Gina, you want to kick it off?
Sure. My name is Gina Loveless. I work for the Michigan Department of Education as the Educational Technology Manager. And I've been in my role for 4 years, and part of that role is to oversee our OER state microsite and collaborate with a lot of wonderful people around that. So Yvette, would you like to go next?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Great to be here. My name is Yvette McMahon-Arnold. I work in the Virgin Islands, in the Virgin Islands Department of Education, where I am the State Director of Instructional Development. I have been with the department 30 plus years now, and I'm looking at 13 years in this current position. It's great to be part of this wonderful team. Great to be introduced to open educational resources, and looking forward to today's session. Let's go to Becky.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Becky Henderson. I am one of the curriculum services supervisors at the Westmoreland Intermediate Unit. We are one of 29 intermediate units across the state of Pennsylvania. And our job is basically to be a regional education service agency to the public school districts in our county. In addition to that, I am also one of 2 co-leads for our Open Educational Resources Initiative across the state of Pennsylvania. I have been at the intermediate unit for 5 years now, and in this current role for just over a year. Prior to that, I was the distance learning supervisor for 4 years. And Amee, we're back to you.
Thank you. I'm Amee Evans Godwin. I'm Senior Advisor at ISKME. We're a global nonprofit that supports learning experiences to be more participatory, equitable, and open, and supporting educators to participate. We do research and have OER services, including we're the creator of OER Commons, a digital public library of OER from around the world. So part of my job that I love so much is connecting people from across the country and around the world that want to get together and do this work. So what is the Go Open Network? If you're not familiar, we have been community-led, where educators and leaders from across the US that know that working together is the most important part of doing this work. The benefits of joining the network is to be able to have colleagues that you can collaborate with and communicate with around OER implementation, practice, and policy. And I believe we're really the only national organization here dedicated to the K-12 OER landscape. And there's a great need for that. You may have heard in the conference that higher ed faculty, 2/3 are aware of OER, but in the K-12 space, only 1/3 or less are aware of OER. So there's still a lot of work to do to advance awareness and participation in open education in the K-12 space. One of the things we do to advance this is we talk about the benefits for empowering teachers once they know about open licenses, what's freely available, what can be changed and modified to fit their classroom, and how they can do it together, and how many great resources and collections of things are already out there. But they don't have to start from scratch. They can take and find collections, they can raise their digital skills and get deeply involved. We communicate about the benefits for educators to have more investment in their curriculum when the materials are open and they have either found them, evaluated them, created them themselves, or adapted them. Adapting includes contextualizing and customizing materials to meet students' needs, especially to make them accessible for students with disabilities or learning preferences, and inclusivity to meet the needs of all students to see themselves reflected in their learning and to become more engaged. So we find these communicating these benefits is a way of getting teachers to understand they may already be doing open educational practice. They just never called it OER. Some of the concrete releases that have supported engagement, one of them is the Go Open Hub on OER Commons. OER Commons, as I mentioned, a digital public library, and this area, the hub, contains resources about OER, what people are doing across states and districts that they want to share. And that includes our entire webinar series and all the resources that go along with them. It's free and open for anyone to access and use. The professional learning webinars give leaders a chance to share their experiences and expertise, and we'll be highlighting the ones that we did this year. And our key themes around the umbrella of collaboration is district planning, using cohorts to implement OER at the district level, and states to not have to start from scratch and work alone themselves. We support peer mentoring and sharing. And when it comes to resources, we talk about how they can be adapted or designed to address accessibility, inclusiveness, and student needs, and teacher practices, digital skills, and leadership, and ways of using open educational resources that can fit with the way they're already dealing with curriculum needs, such as standards alignment or other ways of contextualizing materials to their classroom. Another exciting thing that we did this year is created a guide and a toolkit around our policy action. And this action has been around connecting OER as a solution, part of a solution for digital equity. And we'll talk a bit more about that. But right now, all the states are able to apply for federal funding to support digital equity, which has to do with the connectivity in their state. And we're asking, where is the quality curriculum and engagement OER can lend to the digital equity movement in any state? So we have tools around advocating for this. And we have this guide that I'm going to have Becky explain a bit, but we had a subgroup of Go Open, K-12 Voices for Open, create a guide for district implementation that really takes into account diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility as a commitment that goes hand in hand with OER. So Becky, why don't you tell us a little bit more about that work?
Sure, thanks, Amy. So in April of 2023, the Go Open National Network actually hosted a webinar that gave the authors of the guide an opportunity to highlight their work. And if you go ahead and go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about the purpose of this guide. The purpose is actually written right here. We wanted to provide clear definitions and a rationale for OER and DEIA. And for those of you that are not familiar with DEIA as an acronym, that stands for diversity, equity, inclusion. And I'm sorry, I just totally blanked for a moment. Oh my goodness. Accessibility. Man, sometimes acronyms really get you. There's so many there, but that was the purpose of having this guide, so that if you do have that moment of blanking, you have a reference case for it and you have those definitions there. We wanted to outline different points of entry for K-12 districts so that you know that there's not just one starting point for this, that there's multiple places where you can go. And we wanted to show how it can connect to the work that you're already doing. So if you go ahead and go to the next slide, you're going to see how this outlines and connects to cycles of continuous improvement. You can see there are 8 components to the guide: goals and success metrics, core teams and roles, actions and timelines, collaboration plan, funding plan, advocacy plan, educator and staff professional learning plan, and infrastructure and support. In Pennsylvania, this aligns to what we call our comprehensive planning cycle. But in other states, everyone has their own name for how this work goes. And when you go through and put this all together, what you can see is each of these is a logical entry point for how you can connect all of your OER and DEIA work together to other things that you're doing. We wanted to make sure that you had a guide that made sense for you. So whether you are a veteran OER user, whether this is something that is brand new to you, you can say, hey, this is something that makes sense for me. For all of the work that we're doing, this is not a new initiative. This is a continuation of the work that we are doing, and here's how OER and DEIA fit into that.
Awesome. Thank you, Becky. Now, this is a highlight of the work that we're always so pleased to present. Gina and Yvette, do you want to tell us about this? And I'll move the slides as you need.
So one of the unintended outcomes, I think, that came out of some of this work were the development of relationships and work relationships. So that's something that Yvette and I, we speak very highly of. We come from very different parts of, I'm going to say, the world. Even though she's just down in the U.S. Virgin Islands and I'm up in Michigan. Yvette, what do you have to say about getting us started here?
Oh gosh. Well, yes, getting started has been actually a great experience, and we continue to support that and support each other. We came together by chance when I started exploring the microsite, an opportunity for microsites. I used Michigan's microsite as my go-to, and everything that I would do, and those who were supporting me here, we all knew about Michigan. We knew what was happening on your site. We knew how it was built out and so forth. And in one webinar, I was introduced to Gina, and it was like, wait, this is Michigan's person? Oh, wow, I have to meet her. And it went from there. And since then, we've been supporting each other, mentoring each other, sharing resources, and building, particularly on my side, building the VI microsite through a lot of the support and the mentoring that I received from Michigan through Gina. So it's been an awesome experience.
So Amee, I think the next slide will go into some of what got us started. So I first have to say and give a shout out to, I learned from other people when I took my position, and it would be amiss if I didn't call out Barbara Sutz, who is also in the room. So shout out to Barb, because I learned a ton of OER just information and what Washington State had done, and just went and ran with it, which helped develop this relationship. So that was an unexpected thing happening today. I had to make sure we talked about. But one of the hubs that we found in Michigan that was super helpful at the beginning of our work, we were putting in a lot of resources and the really quality stuff, but not all of it had been aligned to the standards within the microsite. So we made one of the kind of, I call it something cool on the back end, was we created a hub, and we actually hired teachers in one summer. And in about 3 weeks, we went from 12,000 resources that probably about 5 to 10% were aligned to our standards, to all of those resources aligned to about 90% of them, 90 to 95% were aligned to our standards in just 3 weeks. We used a hub called the Resource Alignment Tracking Hub. It allowed us to track what teachers were doing and what they were aligning so that we could pay them appropriately. And this was just another example that I had shared with Yvette as to how we created more aligned content for our teachers to access. Yvette, you want to tell us
Yes.
about the Core
Sure.
Hub?
Yes, and I want to share how we use the Core Hub, and we use a heart to suggest that curriculum is our heartbeat of the department. And so a lot of the support that I've received from Gina actually went into the development of this hub. I fed so much from her, off her, regarding this hub. And I shout out Barbara as well. And so what this Core Hub is one that brings the curriculum, our standards and curriculum in one space within the microsite. And then it allows the teachers, the educators as a whole to access the thousands of resources that are in the microsite that they can align, that are aligned to standards. And so what a teacher sees when he or she goes into the hub is a listing, a collection by content area. And each content area is a growing hub, I must say. So the idea is that there's never going to be an endpoint, but that each content will have standards and curriculum for the Virgin Islands, and then the entire hub to support those standards and curriculum. What we use to continue to push this, professional development that we initially received from ISKME on the Curriculum Review Academy and culturally relevant teaching. And I'll share some more about that later on. And I do a lot of on-site. I visit schools, I spend a day at the schools, I go from one classroom to the next, and I share this hub. I've done so with coordinators, I've done so with administrators, I've done so school by school, I've shared it with Board of Education, I've done public awareness, you name it, been to the AFT conferences, local conferences, and just put it out there, bring that awareness. The idea is that this becomes a one-stop center for our educators where they can go for their standards, their curriculum, and then have the support of the open educational resources housed on the hub. So let me turn it over to you, Amee.
Thank you. I love how both of you really represent such a comprehensive initiative in your areas. Uniquely, you have supported each other and shown that the sharing makes such a difference in your local initiative. So thank you. So we'll briefly talk about some of the other things that we highlighted this year. And one is around digital accessibility. The network has been partnered with CAST and the AIM Center, who for many years has been a leader in accessibility and digital accessibility. They have tools that we were able to highlight and protocols for creating and curating accessible OER. And these protocols target OER specifically to talk to educators about ways to design and curate open materials that meet accessibility requirements, whether it's document structure, having descriptive links, image, alt text, making things color contrast and readable on digital tools and screen readers, and using accessibility checkers. So we're really looking to lift up the skills and make the creation of OER take in accessibility from the start, and not to go back with the mindset of accommodation, but design and universal design for learning is built in from the start. We worked also to highlight the Oregon team because they had partnered with CAST to have training and have an Oregon open learning cohort that with the Department of Education in Oregon was able to provide professional learning around accessibility and use these tools. And going forward, Go Open, ISKME, and CAST are looking to revise some of these materials to include the POUR framework, which is making materials perceivable, observable, usable, and robust, so that OER can meet and go beyond the minimum and really be in the quality of good design and accessibility from the start. Becky, the expert on Pennsylvania.
Thanks, Amy. So to kick off the 2023-2024 school year, the Go Open National Network highlighted the ways in which Pennsylvania has been historically utilizing OER to support statewide STEM initiatives. We're going to go ahead and go to the next slide here. The PA STEM toolkit, you can see our icon here, was created as a collaborative effort by a work group of individuals from the Pennsylvania Department of Education, or PDE, the Pennsylvania Association of Intermediate Units, PAIU, and Pennsylvania educators. Using our PAIU hub on OER Commons, the toolkit has grown to become a central repository for educators across the Commonwealth, and we're really excited about the way that it's grown since then. During the webinar, our speakers, I was one of them, Tracy Rains and Demetrius Roberts were the other two. We provided an overview of our cohort-based approach for creating a set of high-quality STEM resources, guides, and we explored the way that the toolkit and the collections have kind of grown and the way that we use them and adapt resources to meet the requirements of our newly adopted STEEL standards in Pennsylvania. The STEEL standards really are a big deal in the state. The transition from going to our just regular science standards to these newly adopted standards, which are more in line with NGSS, but as we do in Pennsylvania, we sort of make them more PA specific. They're not quite NGSS, but they're very, very close. Because of that, we have a whole new rollout that's going to take actually a 5-year process to have everyone adopt and implement thoroughly. So the PA STEM toolkit is a central tool for educators across the entire state to use, and we're making sure that there's a strong OER focus as teachers learn a whole new teaching style to adopt these standards. If you go ahead and go to the next slide as well, you can see that as our work continues, individual intermediate units not only utilize the PA STEM toolkit, but they also have their own collections of resources within OER Commons under that PAIU hub umbrella so that they can create and share their own training and professional development materials with the districts within their regions, as well as with each other. I have just an example right here on the screen of a resource that my intermediate unit, the Westmoreland Intermediate Unit, has created. And I can tell you that Appalachia Intermediate Unit 8, Chester County Intermediate Unit are other examples of IUs across the state that have very robust collections within the system as well. So we've been doing quite a bit of work, all very much STEM centric over the last couple of years, and that's going to continue on into the future as we focus on these new STEM STEEL standards.
Great, thanks, Becky. Another highlight of the year has been about concentrating on cultural relevance. And what we did was have a webinar to identify and remediate bias. It was more of a workshop. It was a 90-minute session, and we concentrated on a tool that was created with some educators at ISKME, a tool for identifying bias in sources. We recommend and lead discussions and workshops around this using this tool, and really recommend having a community of practice of educators to do reflective practice in a safe and trusted space. Having educators understand issues related to identity and then apply those to find markers in curriculum for bias that could be remediated. And it was an interesting example that was highlighted around climate education. The group found this material that's freely open from the Forest Service, but they identified bias that was geographic and using colonizing markers for geographic locations that had not adequately identified them using indigenous names, some of the indigenous names, then were added, and people also contextualize it to localize material to be about their local environment, to be more relatable to students. So that also opens us up to practices in general. We had quite a number of webinar series around K-12 practice with open educational resources. And related to the cultural relevance, Yvette, please tell us about your example.
Okay, sure, happy to do so. So we too in the Virgin Islands were fortunate to have a series of webinars, 16 to be exact, on cultural relevance, and that bias tool was actually customized for us and revised and customized for us in the Virgin Islands. And this tool is one that we will use, continue to use, and we want to use the tool in a responsible way. You've heard a lot here about, identifying resources and so forth. And one really concrete way that we'll use the bias tool, we're about to embark on in-person conversations and meetings around our social studies curriculum. We had new standards recently approved by the board, and now we are full scale moving ahead in terms of writing curriculum aligned to those standards. That bias tool is key to this work. We discussed just this morning, as a matter of fact, a number of tools, one being highly qualified instructional materials. How do you identify those high qualified instructional materials? And in so doing, I brought the bias tool to the table and said, hey, we want to be able to incorporate, integrate, utilize this bias tool when we are searching for those HQMIs as we go through the work to align curriculum to standards, and then identify resources, open educational resources as part of our practice to write these into our curriculum. So we wanted to share with teachers here that we don't just choose resources to choose resources, but here is a document, here is a tool that has been tried, and we use this tool in order to determine the fit of our resources for our classroom. We use it to remediate bias, not that you see the bias in a resource and you can't use the tool because the resource because of that, but how do you remediate that bias within the tool and then be able to share it with your classes and within the wider community. So that's how we are using that tool in a very concrete manner.
Great, thank you. I'll just quickly highlight that we also have been working with the Pathways Project at Boise State University. And that's an unusual, great project. Not only do they have hundreds of resources in the humanities around global language learning, they created this year a proficiency rubric for teachers to be able to measure their open educational practice levels of skill, especially after having a professional learning experience through the Pathways Project, and how those digital skills and OER skills were increased. And just a great example of supporting K-12 educators to raise their skills. And that tool is also be available. After we run through everything, we will have within the slides a link to all the tools that we're highlighting, and it's a real compendium, a banquet of riches. Quickly, I'll touch on our digital equity work. We identified a policy action, as I mentioned, to connect OER to digital equity as states are receiving and applying for federal funds through the Digital Equity Act, so that they can really serve a full community with digital inclusion and stimulate adoption of broadband in their states. what are they going to use this great connectivity for? And we were advocating that OER can be part of that solution. So we've been part of the state policy work where states have been having listening sessions around ways that their digital equity plan can, for instance, serve education across the board for lifelong learners, for those incarcerated, for those that are underserved and don't have connectivity in the home. And education is a really important piece of that. And we're hoping that educator leadership, as we build it around OER, can also speak to digital equity and advocating that OER be part of the solution. Some of those solutions could be to have incentives at districts and supports for teachers to do this work, and including having statewide OER repositories. Many states do have OER repositories, and we work through OER Commons to support that. There are many other ways to do that, and there are many states that don't yet have a dedicated collection or repository. So now that we've walked through so many highlights and hopefully not overwhelmed you, Becky's going to just run through so many ways that you can share and get involved with Go Open.
Thanks, Amee. So yes, as Amee already alluded to, we have so many resources. The next few slides, you're going to see how many resources we've featured, and we have them all linked here for you. So when we share out these slides, you'll have access to everything. This first slide starts with just the Go Open Hub on OER Commons, the OER DEIA action plan. And again, if you go to the hub, all of these resources are featured, as well as are all of the recordings and the slide decks from all of our webinars. So you have access to all of the professional learning that we've offered. If you go to the next slide, Amee, you can see even more, from the Open Educational Practices Proficiency Rubric to the Digital Equity Plan Toolkit to Adult Education in Focus. And if you go to the next slide, there's even more still. We have so much here. And this includes some upcoming ones that are going to be featured later this month. We have our next one next week featuring Climb Time resources. So we're very excited for that. If we keep going in the presentation, we want to encourage everyone to continue to engage with us. So please join and engage on the Go Open Hub. The link is right there. When you go to the hub, you can click and become a member. You'll have access to all of our resources. You can go ahead and contribute to the community as well. And we're still on Twitter, X, whatever you still call it, we're still there. We love to tweet, we love to talk, so please engage with us. We are Go Open Network on Twitter, so you'll find us there still. And we have a LinkedIn page as well. This is where we like to take a deep dive and have more thoughtful conversations with people. So please follow our page there. And of course, we have a YouTube channel where all of our webinar recordings are at. We have some smaller recordings, some shorter clips there as well.
Great. We may have a few minutes left for questions if anyone wants to pop in and have comments and questions. And another shout out to Barbara Such. She has been instrumental in the OER movement and is part of the Climb Time webinar next week to highlight climate education in OER. So really great that there's been so many folks that took advantage of the Go Open opportunities to share your expertise with the rest of the K-12 community. Are there any questions?
No question, just a comment. I wanted to say it's great to see you guys. Nice job. Just all the work that everybody's doing. It makes me very happy to be part of the community. Great stuff going on.
Thanks.
Thanks. Thanks,
Thank
Barbara.
you.
Yeah, and we'll be seeing you next week. So as Becky mentioned, there's so many ways to get involved and to enrich your open educational experience. Thank you, Susan. Appreciation for professional learning opportunities. That was the first thing we heard when we did a membership survey. People wanted to learn more about how to do this work and connect with others that are doing it. So we're really proud that we were able to offer so many topics related to open educational practice and really support those to think about the breadth and the depth of doing this work. I'll add
Amy, if you don't
yeah,
mind, I'd like
oops.
to add on to that as well.
Yeah,
When we
please.
sent that survey out, a lot of the feedback was that administrators wanted to hear from other administrators, specifically what it was like to go through leading an OER implementation with their staff. So for those of you on the call that are leaders and are going through it, if you want to share your story, please reach out to the Go Open Network, because we would love to highlight your story. If you're looking for inspiration or looking for a mentor, reach out to us as well, because we'd love to connect you with some individuals. That's kind of what we do as part of the community. We like to facilitate those connections and put people in touch. And Gina and Yvette are a great example of how those relationships can grow and blossom. And we want to make sure that people really can connect and develop those meaningful relationships and rely on each other so that their work can grow and that relationships can grow and friendships can develop. And they're a beautiful example of how that works.
And thanks for the comments. That
Mhm.
Joseph, you're going to be working with ISKME. We'd love to have you be part of this, and we will be sharing the slides, and all the links to specific resources are on our hub. Feel free to send us an email, and of course on social media. We'd love to hear your comments. If OER is making a difference, or if you're having challenges doing your implementation, we're here to support all of that and spread that awareness and benefits across K-12 space.
Amy, if I may, for those states who are thinking about OER, thinking about ISKME, I must say where ISKME is concerned, it's not an organization that sells you a product and then walks away. It's one that stays with you, provides you with support, provides you with encouragement. I appreciate the professionalism, the opportunities to grow with ISKME. They allow you to grow and they grow along with us. And so don't be concerned, don't hesitate. Know that you are entering into a partnership and not purchasing a product and no support after that. It's like becoming part of a family, Gina says.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
Amy, there
I'm a
is a
little biased,
question.
but yes, yes. Go ahead.
Amy, there is a
Question.
question in the Q&A.
Oh,
It's
could you
from
read it?
Cameron. Yes, it says, how do you see AI playing into OER? Thoughts on moving away from Google Docs and using a different platform for creating OER?
Oh, such a big subject. We haven't had a spotlight on AI yet, but we have something cooking in the wings. And Becky, I know you're certainly advocating for that. And when we heard from your leader in Pennsylvania, we know that AI is making so many important inroads in education. Do you want to comment?
Sure. AI is obviously on everyone's minds right now. And I think that in all things, when it comes to educational technology, we have to move forward, make progress, but we also have to be cautious and have the guardrails in place to make sure that we're making smart decisions with everything. So my thoughts are, you need to make sure that you're pairing artificial intelligence with human intelligence, just like Sal Khan tells us in his fabulous TED Talk that he shared. But we need to make sure that we're using it and leveraging it in the right ways to make us as productive and as creative and innovative as possible. At the Westmoreland Intermediate Unit, we are looking at ways that we can do that to expand our opportunities to create professional learning for teachers. And we're actually going to be doing a presentation at AESA, that's the conference for all of the education service agencies, at the end of the month. It's actually going to be right at the end of November, beginning of December. And then we're going to be holding a really big national webinar the beginning of January on this as well. So if you're interested in learning more about kind of how we're tackling that problem, let me know. I'm happy to invite you to that because it's intricate, but it is something that I think that if you're thoughtful and intentional about, it can actually drive creativity and be a great way to embrace it, knowing that it's the first step in the process to leverage the technology to then also pair it with your own skills and your capabilities. And I see that Barbara has her hand raised as well.
And also Brandon has to stop the recording, but we can stay on.
Just a super quick shout out actually to one of our colleagues gave a fantastic talk on generative AI and OER development. It was a session right before this one, and I know that there's a recording of the session. So just a recommendation to check it out. It really was a good talk.
Oh, great. Thank you.